Imagine a silent invader. But this one doesn't come with armies or warships. No, it's hidden away in something you see every day: shipments of fruit. This is the story of a tiny traveler that crossed an ocean and then, in what felt like the blink of an eye, conquered an entire continent. All right, so let's meet our culprit. This is Zaprionus indianus, an African fruit fly. Now, I know it's tiny, but you should not let its size fool you. Back in 1999, it was officially spotted for the very first time in Brazil, in a town called Santa Isabel, in the state of São Paulo. This was the beginning of what would become a major headache for fruit growers all across the Americas. 1999, remember that year? It's basically day one of an invasion that was so fast it just blew scientists' minds. It was the start of a biological takeover like nobody had ever seen.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did a fly this tiny conquer a massive continent so unbelievably fast? I mean, in other parts of the world, this exact same kind of spread took decades. But in the Americas, it was a blur. The answer, it turns out, is a fascinating detective story hidden in genetics and, well, our highways.
Okay, so like any good detective story, you've got to start at the beginning. For biological invasions, that means finding patient zero, right? The origin point. And that's exactly what scientists set out to do: find the epicenter of this whole invasion. So scientists got clever. They used genetics to build this, well, it's a pretty unusual looking map. See those peaks? They aren't mountains. They actually show where the most genetic diversity is. Think of it this way. Higher peaks mean older, more established populations. And, well, just look where the highest peaks are all clustered. Yeah, the DNA doesn't lie. All the genetic evidence pointed to one single place as ground zero for this whole invasion: the state of São Paulo. This is where the flies first landed. This was their beachhead. And it turns out São Paulo was the perfect launchpad. I mean, think about it. It's the absolute heart of Brazil's commercial fruit trade. So that's how it got in. The genetics prove it's where the flies were hanging out the longest, diversifying. It basically acted like a giant trampoline, just flinging the invasion north, south, and everywhere in between.
Okay, so we know where it started, but that doesn't explain how it traveled thousands of kilometers so fast. I mean, these flies didn't just flap their little wings from one end of Brazil to the other. No. As it turns out, they had a little help.
And this is basically their travel itinerary. They hitched a ride. The study found that their spread lined up perfectly with the flow of fruit trucks along Brazil's biggest highways. They were basically tiny, unwitting passengers in our very own supply chain. You can think of these as the two invasion superhighways. You had the BR-53, which took the flies deep into the country and down south, and then at the same time, you had the BR-116, which was like a coastal express route, shooting them all the way up to the northeast. It was this incredibly effective two-pronged attack. Now, to really get your head around just how insane this is, check this out. The spread from São Paulo all the way to Florida, it took about 6 years. 6. Now, a similar journey in the Old World, from India to Egypt, took over 40 years. So what was the big difference? The highly developed highway network in the Americas. But wait, the story has a twist. The invasion wasn't completely unstoppable. Even with all our modern infrastructure helping them out, these flies hit a few roadblocks. And the genetic data revealed another really fascinating layer to this whole thing: invisible barriers. So let's go back to this map for a second. Scientists found a few of these barriers, but one in particular, labeled C, right here, was really strong. And what did it line up with perfectly? A massive geographical feature: the Serra do Mar, this huge 1,500-kilometer-long mountain range that runs along the coast. So this mountain range was basically a genetic wall. What that means is it was really hard for the flies on the coast to, mix and breed with the flies on the other side, inland. That physical separation just choked off the flow of genes between them. And what happens over time? You get these distinct genetic neighborhoods of flies. It just goes to show you, even in an invasion that's been supercharged by human activity, the ancient geography of the land still gets to have its say. It literally shaped the genetics of the invader. And just like that, the scientific detectives had all the pieces of the puzzle. They knew where it all began, they knew how it traveled so ridiculously fast, and they even knew what managed to slow it down. They had cracked the case of the continental conquest. So what's the final verdict? Well, the formula for this record-breaking invasion is actually pretty simple. You take global fruit commerce, that's the ticket in, you add a modern highway network, that's the getaway car. And what's the result? A biological invasion that happened in record time. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers who actually cracked this case, Galego and Carareto, said it best back in 2010. The huge difference in the speed of the invasion was, and I'm quoting here, attributed to the more developed freeway networks in Brazil. We literally and completely accidentally paved the way for our own invader. And this is really the so what of the whole story. What started out in a single fig orchard in Sao Paulo has now become this massive economic and ecological problem for fruit growers, not just in Brazil, but pretty much across the entire American continent. So, it kind of leaves you with this one last thought, doesn't it? In our world, where everything is so connected, we're all part of this massive transportation network. So it makes you wonder, how many other invisible hitchhikers might be traveling with us right now?